On the night of March 4th, 2018, in international waters near the coast of India, a luxury yacht named the Nostromo was attacked by Indian and Emirati commandos. On the deck, amidst the smoke and chaos, a young woman resisted with all her might and shouted, "Shoot me, right here. Do not take me back to the Emirates." This woman was Princess Latifa al-Maktoum, the runaway daughter of the ruler of Dubai. She was a girl who had spent more than half of her life planning to escape from her father, and now, after years, she had managed to flee the Emirates and reach the coast of India, intending to go to America with a fake passport and seek asylum. But why did the daughter of one of the world's most powerful men prefer death over returning to her gilded cage? To find the answer, we must go behind the curtain of Dubai's royal family. Welcome to Profile. We unmask the truth hidden behind the headlines. If you're a seeker of untold stories, subscribe to join us. To understand Latifa's story, we must first know her father, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. He is a man known to the world as the architect of modern Dubai. He was the one who transformed a small desert port into one of the most important commercial and tourist centers in the world, a futuristic metropolis that is a symbol of progress and modernity in the Middle East. Sheikh Mohammed has built his public image with obsessive care. In the West, he is a strategic ally, a major business partner, and a close friend of the British royal family. Inside the Emirates, he introduces himself as a champion of gender equality. In his speeches, he promises to remove all barriers facing women and calls them the soul and spirit of the country. But behind this glitzy storefront, another reality flows. In her video, Latifa describes Dubai as an open-air prison where disobedience is brutally punished. And this contrast is the heart of our story. For a ruler with absolute power, total control over the family, especially the women, is not just a personal matter. It is part of his display of authority to the people. Any disobedience within the palace is a political challenge that must be suppressed quickly and decisively. For Latifa, this gilded cage was a real prison from the very moment of her birth. Latifa spent the first 10 years of her life without even knowing she had another sister. Her mother, Houria Lamara, the beautiful Algerian wife of Sheikh Mohammed, bore him 4 children. But Latifa and her younger brother, when they were infants, were given as gifts to Sheikh Mohammed's childless sister. Life in her aunt's palace was intensely suffocating. They were kept with dozens of other children under the supervision of nurses and almost never left the rooms. Her aunt rarely visited them, and when she did, she would beat the children so much that their bodies were covered in bruises. Latifa writes, "I remember I was always behind the window, watching the people outside. Sometimes photographers would come and prepare her like a doll with jewelry, clothes, and makeup. They would take photos with a puppy and send the pictures to her mother. But afterward, they would take everything away and return her to her room." At night, Latifa would dream that a giant kite would carry her away into the sky. This isolation was finally broken when her older sister, Shamsa, who until then thought she was Latifa's cousin, discovered the truth. Shamsa, who was 4 years older, went to their aunt's palace with great audacity and firmly demanded that her younger sister and brother be returned home. Latifa later wrote with deep gratitude, "Shamsa was the only one who fought for us and wanted us. I saw her as both a mother and my best friend." After returning to their mother's house, life changed slightly. Sheikh Mohammed visited them occasionally and, according to one palace staff member, appeared to be a kind father who showered his daughters with kisses and hugs. But this same father would fall into an uncontrollable rage at the slightest hint of disobedience. Latifa told her friends that she once witnessed her father repeatedly punching Shamsa in the head simply because she had interrupted him. For those like Latifa who were unwilling to accept a traditional role, the gilded cage became a literal prison. According to Latifa, Shamsa was full of life and adventure, and from her teenage years, she rebelled against the restrictions of royal life. She wanted to drive, go to university, and she despised wearing the abaya. This rebellious spirit eventually led her to the first great escape in the al-Maktoum family. In the summer of 2000, while the family was staying at their summer estate in Longcross, England, Shamsa took advantage of a quiet night, got into a Range Rover, and fled the grounds. For several weeks, she hid in London and even approached a lawyer named Paul Simon to apply for asylum. However, Simon warned her that because of the friendly relations between Britain and the UAE, her chances of success were almost zero. Her father, Sheikh Mohammed, personally came to England to lead the search operation. Finally, in August, 4 Emirati men abducted Shamsa on a street in the city of Cambridge, took her to another of her father's properties, injected her with sedatives, and flew her back to Dubai on a private jet. This story was revealed when Shamsa managed to contact her lawyer from Dubai. Chief Inspector David Beck from the Cambridgeshire Police began an extensive investigation. He obtained clear evidence of the abduction, including CCTV footage and flight customs records. However, when he requested to travel to Dubai to interview Shamsa, the British Foreign Office denied his request. Ben Gunn, the chief constable at the time, said years later in an interview that politics intervened. The investigation was completely stopped, and Shamsa was imprisoned in the house for 8 years. Latifa, who witnessed the horrific fate of her beloved sister, made her first attempt to escape 2 years later in 2002 at the age of 16. She cut her hair completely short, took some cash, and after jumping over the house wall, took a taxi to the Omani border. She intended to cross the border on a bicycle to find a lawyer to help her imprisoned sister. But this childish and naive attempt soon met with a bitter failure. She was arrested near the border. Latifa later wrote in a shocking letter smuggled out of prison that after her arrest, she was transferred to a desert prison. There, one guard held her while another beat the soles of her feet with a heavy wooden stick. She wrote, "That torture lasted for 5 hours, and I could no longer walk. I had to crawl on the ground to drink water from a tap next to the toilet." She was kept in detention for 3 years and 4 months. These horrific experiences proved to her that to gain freedom, she had to design a flawless, professional plan with no turning back. She knew that in the event of failure, a fate even worse than prison might await her. After her release from prison in 2005, Latifa lived for years in outward silence and isolation. She was forbidden from leaving the country and was constantly under surveillance. But throughout this entire time, she was preparing for her final escape. She turned to extreme sports with an almost obsessive focus, skydiving dozens of times, diving hundreds of times, and even learning wingsuit flying. She was transforming her body and soul into a tool for escape. During this period, she met 2 people who were to become key figures in her escape plan. The first was Tiina Jauhiainen, a Finnish martial arts instructor hired in 2010 to teach Latifa capoeira. At first, Tiina was amazed by Latifa's seemingly prosperous life, but she gradually noticed the strange restrictions. Latifa wasn't allowed to visit a friend's house and was always watched. Their friendship deepened, and Latifa chose Tiina as her trusted confidant for the grand plan. The second person was Hervé Joubert, a marine engineer and former French naval officer who had escaped Dubai himself years earlier and written a book titled Escape from Dubai. After reading this book, Latifa contacted him. Joubert initially doubted her identity, But after months of secret correspondence, he was finally convinced to help her. The plan was a complex, multinational operation. Over the course of 7 years, Latifa secretly sent more than $500,000 to Joubert. She saved her allowance, and during opportunities when she went out shopping, she would deliver bundles of cash to Joubert's contacts. This money was used to purchase a US-flagged sailing yacht named the Nostromo, as well as jet skis, diving equipment, and satellite communication devices. The initial plan was to repeat Joubert's own escape. Latifa was supposed to cross the Omani border using an underwater scooter and diving gear. However, after practicing, this was deemed far too dangerous. Therefore, a backup plan was designed. Latifa would be hidden in the spare tire compartment of a car to cross the border. Latifa knew this operation might fail. For this reason, a few days before the escape, she secretly went to Tina's apartment, which had become a storehouse for diving equipment, satellite gear, and boat parts. She sat in front of a camera and recorded a 39-minute whistle-blowing video. This video was her life insurance, a media weapon to be used against her father if she were captured. She stated that her father was a major criminal who tortures and imprisons disobedient women. She claimed her older sister, Shamsa, had been held captive and drugged for 18 years after her escape attempt, and that her aunt had been killed for her disobedience.
So, this video could save my life. And if you are watching this video, it's not such a good thing. Either I'm dead or I'm in a very, very, very bad situation.
On the morning of February 24th, 2018, Latifa left the palace on the pretext of having breakfast with Tina. At a restaurant, she went to the restroom, took off her abaya, and threw her tracked mobile phone into the trash can. Then, the two of them drove toward the Omani border in a pre-arranged Audi car. Near the border, Latifa hid in the spare tire compartment of the vehicle. Tina navigated through several checkpoints with intense stress and finally entered Omani soil successfully. In the outskirts of Muscat, they met the third member of the team, Christian Alombo, Tina's former capoeira instructor. It was Alombo who had come up with the idea of hiding in the car. The final stage was reaching the yacht. Despite fishermen's warnings about the sea turning stormy, Latifa and Tina set out into the roaring waves in an inflatable boat. After several harrowing hours during which they were repeatedly on the verge of drowning, they finally reached the jet skis Joubert had sent for them in the darkness of night and made it to the yacht Nostromo. Latifa and Tina were so exhausted and seasick that they couldn't celebrate. Latifa wrote goodbye letters to her mother, sister, and brothers and published them on Instagram. "I have escaped from the Emirates after 18 years of captivity." However, she soon grew suspicious of Joubert. The boat was filthy and infested with cockroaches. The food consisted only of porridge and boiled potatoes. Nevertheless, during those first days on the Nostromo, Latifa tasted freedom. She wrote in a message to a friend, "I feel completely free. Yes, I am a moving target, but I am totally free." The boat was in poor condition and was running out of fuel. Worst of all, the captain spotted a small airplane circling above them. They had been compromised. On the night of March 4th, while the Nostromo was only 50 kilometers away from the coast of Goa, India, the nightmare began. Sheikh Mohammed had found his daughter. Her messages had been intercepted. Interpol, at the UAE's request, had issued a red notice for Latifa's accomplices on charges of kidnapping. When the yacht was located off the coast of Goa, Sheikh Mohammed made a phone call to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In exchange for handing over a famous smuggler to Dubai, India sent commandos, helicopters, and a warship to sea to seize the Nostromo and take Latifa. Latifa and Tina were jolted awake by the sound of exploding stun grenades and the heavy thud of commandos running across the deck. Latifa whispered, "They found us." They locked themselves in the restroom and sent out a series of frantic SOS messages. Soon, the thick, acrid smoke from the grenades began pouring in through the hatches, forcing them out. On deck, Indian and Emirati commandos, their rifles equipped with laser sights, had occupied the boat. Joubert and his crew lay bound and bloodied on the floor. Latifa resisted with all her strength. She shouted, she kicked, and she fought for her escape. She repeatedly screamed, "Shoot me right here! Do not take me back to the Emirates!" The commandos pinned her down by her hands and feet. They injected her with 3 doses of a powerful sedative, forced her onto a helicopter, and returned her to the Emirates by private plane. But Latifa had a secret weapon: the video she had recorded before her flight. After her disappearance, Tina and her other supporters, including Rada Sterling and David Haig in the Free Latifa campaign, released this video. The story of the missing Princess of Dubai quickly became the top headline in the global media.
My full sisters are Metha and Shamsa. They're both older than me, and Majid, he's younger than me.
In December 2018, after Latifa had been missing for 9 months, the UAE came under immense pressure. Sheikh Mohammed, facing intense international scrutiny and a United Nations demand for proof of life, launched a sophisticated media counterattack. At this point, one of the Sheikh's wives, Princess Haya, enters the story. Haya, who was the Sheikh's favorite and youngest wife at the time, later claimed she initially believed her husband's story that Latifa had been rescued from an extortion attempt. She decided to intervene personally to help resolve this family matter. In December 2018, Haya contacted her old friend, Mary Robinson. Robinson was not only the former president of Ireland, but more importantly, the former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. Haya invited her to a private lunch in Dubai to see Latifa's condition firsthand. Latifa, who had been held in a house prison for months, was suddenly taken to a luxury palace. She later said in her secret videos that Haya had told her, "This is a test. If you behave well, you will be released in a few days." At that lunch, Latifa met Mary Robinson for the first time without knowing who she was or her important position. She later recounted, "No one spoke to me privately or asked about my situation. Robinson seemed indifferent and only told stories about herself." After lunch, Latifa was asked to sit next to Robinson for a few souvenir photos. Knowing these photos would be used for propaganda, she tried not to smile. A few days later, the UAE government sent those very photos to the UN and global media as evidence of Latifa's health and happiness. The final blow came when Mary Robinson, in an interview with the BBC, repeated Dubai's official narrative. She described Latifa as a troubled and vulnerable young woman who regretted her escape plan and was now under the care of her loving family. Latifa later said that upon hearing this interview, she cried in her bed for an entire day out of sheer despair. She wrote, "I felt how much I had been used." Later, Robinson herself admitted in an interview that she had been horribly tricked and told that Latifa suffered from bipolar disorder. This media victory for Sheikh Mohammed was short-lived. Princess Haya, having witnessed this stage-managed scene herself, gradually realized the truth. She began asking questions that did not please her husband. Sheikh Mohammed warned her not to interfere and, according to Haya, threats against her began. Then, in the spring of 2019, the biggest blow to the Sheikh's reputation came from where he least expected it. His 6th and youngest wife, Princess Haya, secretly fled to London with her 2 children and sought asylum. The war that Latifa had started had now claimed another victim from within the palace, and this time, the revelations would continue in the UK High Court. Haya had turned to the court to gain custody of her children and protect herself from her husband's threats. Her strongest weapon in this legal battle was the story of her husband's runaway daughters, Shamsa and Latifa. During the court sessions, Tina Yaoyanen testified, describing the violent abduction of Latifa moment by moment. Detective David Beck, after 18 years of silence, finally appeared in court and explained how his investigation into Shamsa's kidnapping had been halted by political interference. But right in the middle of these court sessions, something amazing happened behind the scenes. In the spring of 2019, Tina received a message from an unknown number. The sender was a new staff member at the villa where Latifa was being held, someone who had grown close to her and was willing to take a risk. After this initial contact, the Free Latifa campaign managed to secretly smuggle a mobile phone to Latifa. Suddenly, after months of silence, a voice was heard from inside the prison villa. Latifa could now communicate directly with her lawyer, David Haig, and Tina. Knowing this connection could be cut at any moment, she began documenting her situation daily. She would hide in the bathroom, the only place where she could lock the door, and record dozens of audio files and new videos in a quiet voice.
Hello, my name is Latifa Mohammed bin Rashid Said al-Maktoum. My birthday is December 5, 1985.
I'm a hostage, and this villa has been converted into a jail. All the windows are barred shut. I can't open any window.
These secret videos and messages reached Princess Haya's legal team as first-hand evidence and significantly strengthened her position in court. Sheikh Mohammed's lawyers denied all these accusations, calling Latifa's return a rescue mission. However, the judge now had access to Latifa's prison messages, as well as her original whistleblowing video, which he accepted as a credible testimony with a powerful resonance of truth. Finally, in March 2020, the UK High Court issued its historic ruling. The judge wrote that Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid al-Maktoum was responsible for the abduction and forced imprisonment of his 2 adult daughters and had subjected his wife, Haya, to intimidation and threats. This was the first time a Western court at the highest level officially found Sheikh Mohammed guilty and accused him of barbaric behavior. The British court ruling was a massive victory, but for Latifa, still confined in her prison villa and now with her secret communication at constant risk of being discovered, the war was not over. In her messages to David Haig, she grew increasingly desperate. She wrote, "I am in a permanent nightmare. I feel like I am dying from a very gradual death by suffocation." A few weeks later, she wrote, "I am tired. I am hopeless." In July 2020, her mobile phone suddenly went dead. Communication was completely cut off for months. Her supporters, fearing for her life, fell into despair and decided to use their last and most powerful weapon. In February 2021, they provided the secret videos Latifa had recorded in the bathroom to the BBC. The release of these videos shocked the world. The UN demanded proof that Latifa was alive, and the British government, for the first time, expressed its deep concern over her situation. Pressure on Sheikh Mohammed had reached its peak, and then suddenly, everything changed. In the spring of 2021, a new and very complex media strategy began from Dubai. A British woman named Sinead Taylor, who was Latifa's unofficial guardian, published a photo of herself with Latifa in a Dubai mall on Instagram. In the photo, Latifa had a numbed expression and a vacant look. In the following months, more photos were published. Latifa at Madrid airport, Latifa in Iceland, and Latifa in Paris next to Michelle Bachelet, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. These images had a clear message: Latifa is free and can travel. At the same time, letters from a new law firm reached her supporters in the Free Latifa campaign. These letters stated that Latifa wanted a quiet and private life and asked them to end their campaign. Even Latifa's cousin, Marcus Essabri, a key member of the campaign, announced after an arranged meeting with Latifa in Iceland that she was happy and the campaign was no longer needed. The campaign that had fought for her freedom for years finally ended its activities.
Our legal work to free her and the campaign in general. Thank you very much for your interest.
A few months later, an Instagram account named after Latifa was opened, writing, "I am now completely free and live an independent life. Please respect my privacy." But the main question remains, is this true freedom or just a larger gilded cage? Has Latifa, after years of imprisonment and torture, finally surrendered and made a deal for silence to gain limited freedom? A nurse who worked for a time in the team caring for her sister Shamsa describes Latifa's current situation like this. Latifa now lives in her own home. She drives herself and she doesn't wear an abaya. I think she made a deal and now lives within accepted frameworks. She just has to remain silent and bury the past. When this nurse was asked where Shamsa is, she said, "I don't know. No one knows." No one knows what goes through Latifa's mind. She has given no direct interview or statement since then. Has she reached the quiet life she claims? At the end of this complex story, two narratives remain. The first is the story of rebellious daughters who rebelled against the traditions and honor of their family and, after seeing hardships, finally returned to the family fold. The second is the story of women who were willing to risk everything to gain freedom and were ultimately forced into a bitter compromise. Every story has two sides, and the truth usually lies somewhere in the shadows. We want to hear your perspective. Join the discussion in the comments below. Was it justice, or was it a betrayal? If this deep dive moved you, support our mission by liking and sharing this video. Thank you for being part of the Profile community. Until next time, stay curious.